what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's exactly 11 o'clock and it's time for Headliners, in which two top comedians will be helping me look at tomorrow's big stories. And tonight helping me to do just that are the brilliant Leo Kearse and Andrew Doyle. See you after the headlines.
Thank you. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says the UK will do everything it can to change the heavy odds against Ukraine as Russian troops advance towards the capital. It comes after a phone call with the Ukrainian president in which the two leaders agreed that the international community needs to isolate Russia diplomatically and financially. Well, speaking at RAF Bryce Norton, Boris Johnson paid tribute to the incredible heroism of Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainian people.
Let's be in no doubt, things are not going all the way of President Putin. Very far from it. The Ukrainians are fighting heroically, but as you rightly point out, there are some terrible atrocities being committed, and there will be some very grim days ahead for Ukraine.
Well, the UK and its Western allies have agreed to cut selected Russian banks from access to the SWIFT international messaging system. This latest round of sanctions against Moscow will also include restrictions on the Russian central bank's access to international reserves. In a statement tonight, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen condemned the barbaric actions of Russia.
We will stop Putin from using his war chest. We will paralyze the assets of Russia's central bank. This will freeze its transactions, and it made it impossible for the central bank to liquidate assets.
An advisor to the Ukrainian president claims 3,500 Russian soldiers have been killed or injured so far. Well, this evening, an air raid siren was heard in the capital as Russian forces targeted the city with artillery and cruise missiles. The mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko, has imposed a curfew and people have been warned to seek shelter. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson says the UK will take refugees fleeing the war in Ukraine. Drone footage shows an 18-mile-long queue of vehicles on Ukraine's border crossing as thousands try to enter Poland. The UN Refugee Agency says more than 120,000 Ukrainians have left the country since the invasion began. The aid agency is also warning that fuel, cash and medical supplies are running low in parts of the country, which could drive up to 5 million people to flee abroad. And Chelsea Football Club's Russian owner, Roman Abramovich, says he's giving up stewardship of the Premier League side. Mr. Abramovich, who bought the London club in 2003, says the trustees of its charitable foundation are in the best position to look after its interests. He will remain as Chelsea's owner, but will not be involved in any further decision-making. Well, on TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Headliners.
Many thanks to Miranda, who returns in an hour's time. I'm Mark Dolan, and you're watching Headliners, in which we bring you a first look at tomorrow's papers, in the company of the cleverest, funniest and best value comedians in the country. Tonight, former Scottish Comedian of the Year, Leo Kearse. And former Miss February in the 1997 Pirelli calendar, Andrew Doyle.
I didn't know you knew about that.
I've got 12 copies.
Right.
And if you pay me enough money, I'll burn them.
I'll have to, I think.
But it would be a terrible waste. Gentlemen, lots to get through, and clearly the only show in town is going to be Mr. Putin.
I would have thought so.
Yeah,
yes.
Unfortunately. Well, look, with a heavy heart, we get to tomorrow's front pages, which are dominated by one story, as I've mentioned, starting in the Sunday Telegraph. Let's have a look at what we've got here. Excuse me, I will improve my eyesight there. Fierce resistance slows Putin's advance in Ukraine. Moving on to the Independent. Welcome these refugees, clutching her teddy as she flees the Russian invasion. This child is one of 150,000 people to cross the border out of Ukraine. Millions will follow in search of safety, and now Britain must play its part. Say the Independent, of course, the issue of a forthcoming and impending refugee crisis will be front and centre of any debate going forward. How about the Observer? The world shuns pariah Putin. Inside the mind of Vladimir Putin, that's one of their journalists is doing that, but key allies now are abandoning Putin, and Germany has outlined a historic shift on arms supplies. So pressure mounting on the Russian leader. Sunday Mirror, the fight is here. Zelensky's hero troops hit Russians, brave Ukrainians hold on to capital, and Abramovich quits running Chelsea. The Sunday Times now. Terror stalks the streets. Ukrainian volunteers hunt traitors and Kremlin spies as fear grips Kiev. And how about this? A shocking headline from the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss. Prepare for 10 years of war. And as I've mentioned, Abramovich gives up control of Chelsea. Sunday Express, Lionhearts in a fabulous, arresting headline. Ukraine president vows, we will fight as long as it takes to liberate our country. Boris Johnson has said things are not going the way Putin wants, very far from it. So that's a story clearly captured brilliantly by that photograph. And the Daily Star Sunday, we won't run and hide. Defiant Ukraine president on streets of Kiev as Putin's invaders are held. Ukraine's hero president taunts mad Vlad Putin by strolling around Kiev, then vowed to destroy the occupiers as Russia came up against fierce resistance in the capital last night. An uncharacteristically serious but appropriate and very dignified headline from the Star on Sunday. And those are the headlines. Leo Kearse, what is the Observer's take on the Ukraine story?
Yeah, so Ukraine, I mean, I know you said it's all doom and gloom with Vladimir Putin at the start, but honestly, he's having a shocker. It's maybe doom and gloom if you're Vladimir Putin, to be honest. The Ukrainians have hugely embarrassed him so far. You know, people assumed that this was going to be a blitzkrieg. The mighty, you know, they've got such vast forces, as many as 200,000 forces lined up, all this heavy armour and tanks, air support and shelling. So they thought that they'd have a clean sweep. It would be like, you know, the Allies going into Baghdad in 2003 or whenever it was. And it's not. It's been absolutely... they've really been held back. And it shows that people who are fighting for their land and for their lives are going to fight 10 times harder than people who are fighting for money. And it's not just the actual delays and the sort of, he's already getting bogged down in the fighting. Also, allies that he thought would stand by him or at least be complacent are turning their back on him. So Chinese state media reshared a video of Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, you know, giving a speech, which was completely unprecedented. You know, China traditionally has been very behind Russia and against the West, but I think, you know, Putin has been so rash and so, you know, it's so chaotic and dangerous. China wants to take over the world, but in a sort of orderly way, without any sort of megalomania. And Turkey, another on and off ally of Russia, is contemplating stopping Russian warships from access to the Black Sea, which would be devastating for Putin if they couldn't get submarines and warships through there. And Germany as well, who aren't an ally of Russia, but they certainly buy a lot of Russian gas and oil, as well as towards scrapping Nord Stream 2. They're also now deciding to send plenty of arms to help.
More than
Ukrainians.
helmets. How nice of them.
Yeah,
So
more
what,
than
gloves,
helmets.
Socks?
Yeah.
Basically the rest of the outfit.
Yeah.
They've got these boxes of helmets. So like, where's the rest of it? Where's the coats? Where's the guns?
Well, they've really gone for it. They're going to supply Ukrainian troops with 1,000 anti-tank weapons, as well as 500 Stinger missiles from its own military reserves. And this is abandoning its post-war military stance. France as well is doing the same. But it's interesting what you said about China, because people didn't see that coming. I mean, even in the Security Council vote, China abstaining rather than going with Russia. I mean, that is very significant. Orban as well, you would have thought might have more support for Russia and saying he will back all sanctions. So these are interesting developments.
And you're in trouble when you relinquish the moral high ground to China.
That is true.
When they're guilt tripping you, it's a problem.
Putin is not Mr. Popular. Not that Putin ever was Mr. Popular, particularly.
No, absolutely not. Well, what about The Observer, who are reporting on EU banking machinations? Tell me about this.
Yes, so this is an escalation of sanctions, which I suppose is what we would have all expected. Sanctions, of course, in this kind of situation are at best a punishment. They're not going to solve the situation. But people do feel, the international community certainly feels obligated to do this. And many EU countries now, France, Italy, Greece, are coming out and saying that they are going to back a ban on Russia from using the SWIFT global payments network. So that's going to cause a huge problem for Putin. Cyprus and Hungary also saying that they're going to support it. So, and although, like I say, these things aren't going to resolve the issue, Putin clearly was aware that by taking this course of action, he was going to suffer sanctions of this kind, and they're doing it. They're going to do it.
I mean, SWIFT is a mechanism by which payments can be made around the world. It would be devastating for the Russian economy if they're cut out of that.
Yeah.
We spoke on last night's show, didn't we? And you were suggesting that there may be some hesitancy to do that. So why the delay, and will it happen?
Well, it's not entirely one of these things that's just going to benefit Ukraine and be bad for Russia. So Russia will use other means of communication. It's got its own system called SPFS, and so it's not as quick as the SWIFT system. They should have given it a faster name, SWIFT. Of course it's going to be faster.
Name, correct.
But they'll invest in it so it gets faster, and then they'll use that as an alternative, or Chinese systems, and also Europe still needs to pay Russia. So we can't, we'll cut them out of SWIFT. We're still going to have to pay them somehow. So we get 35% of our gas from Russia because of, mostly because of ridiculous green policies that mean that we've done away with our nuclear and our own, North Sea oil and gas and energy and fracking and things like that.
We've got 500 years of coal under the ground. Did you know that?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
500 years?
Yeah, about 50 years of shale gas and about 20 years of oil.
Yeah, depends how quick you use it.
Yeah. Well, I started drilling. There was a small earthquake in the canteen earlier, but I thought it was
I wondered what that was.
Yeah. Well, look, it's obviously a massive story, and there are so many elements to this at play. The Daily Star are leading with the courageous leadership of the Ukrainian president, Leo.
Yeah.
He's something of a rock star figure globally now.
Yeah. He is. I mean, I don't have the story, but yes.
Well, you know the story, don't you? I mean, he was offered exile to the United States.
He was offered exile to the United States, and he said, no, I'm going to stay here, which is pretty brave.
And I'm not even going to be in some fancy palace. I'm going to be with the troops.
Yeah, well, and in his, I think he gets a higher class of bunker than the other guys.
That's inevitable.
But yeah, he stayed in the middle of Kyiv. Russia was spreading misinformation that he fled to the west, but no, he stayed in Kyiv. And I'm calling it Kyiv because Kiev is the Russian pronunciation, so we should all go out and buy our chicken Kyivs in solidarity.
So what's Kyiv then? Is Kyiv the British?
Kyiv is how Ukrainians pronounce it.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's like when Apple changed their chargers. I've got to get used to that now. I'm going to start saying Kyiv all the time.
And like when Mumbai became Bombay.
Oh, God. And
It's
then
too much.
in 10 years' time, there'll be a revolution. It'll be Kiev again. You know what I mean? It was just
No, even if there's another revolution, it's Kyiv.
Is that it now? Can we make that decision?
For good, yeah.
You just decided on
Absolutely.
GBNews today. Okay.
And the mayor of Kyiv is Vladimir Klitschko, the former boxer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he's pretty hard. So you've got a stand-up comedian as the president.
Don't get any ideas, Leo.
And a boxer as the mayor.
But all of this talk of Putin sort of pushing his machismo and images of him wrestling with bears and sharks or whatever it is he does. And then, this guy, he says, people are offering to get him out of there, and he says, I need ammunition, not a ride.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Like, this is it kind of just completely overshadows Putin in this, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Definitely. It feels like a war of spirits at the moment, a war of will.
Yeah.
And perhaps what Putin has done is overestimated the ferocity of his own troops and underestimated the courage of the Ukrainian people.
I think he certainly has. I mean, it's interesting you say that a lot of this has become about personalities, the various personalities within this conflict. And that's why it's become so difficult to talk about this, because, when I see people talking about this online, they're often saying, they just dismiss, they're saying Putin must be deranged, or he's just a new tyrant or anything. And to even have a conversation about what his strategy might be, if there is one, people get a lot of flack for this. He's obviously calculated that it's in his national interest to go into Ukraine at this time. He's obviously made that calculation. And it is quite easy.
I don't think he is doing it in terms of national interest.
I don't know. I don't know.
I think he might have gone a bit mad. He's been in power for 22 years, and he said, just whatever he wants. He's a maniac at this point.
But this is the point: is that that might be true. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know what he's thinking. I was surprised that he went in at all, right? And I think a rational person wouldn't have done, given the damage to his economy, the damage to his popularity, etc. But on the other hand, we should explore other possibilities that he does genuinely feel that NATO expansionism into Ukraine, that would be like the last step. That's what he really fears. And that he feels, on balance, that this is the safer option to neutralise Ukraine. No, it's possible that he feels.
But this is going to drive NATO expansion. It's going to put renewed vigour under NATO.
But this is what critics of Donald Trump tried to do. They tried to demonise him, saying he was sort of this bonkers despot. And actually, if you look back at some of the things he said and did in power, some of it was on the money, including that famous dinner party, that dinner scene, when he was filmed talking about how the Germans have completely sold out to Vladimir Putin and are reliant on gas supplies. Donald Trump was right. Now, I'm no cheerleader for Putin, but I think you're right that we need to understand what he's up to and the history of Russia, because Ukraine it has obviously long historic links with Russia, and there are so many Russians living in Ukraine. I mean, the two countries are umbilically linked, aren't they?
Yes.
And it's a relatively flat terrain, and it's always been a weak spot strategically for Russia. They've always been invaded through Ukraine. Perhaps you can understand why Putin's a bit touchy about it.
I have to emphasise that I'm not in any way defending Putin at all.
You've taken money from him, let's be honest.
That's what it sounds like.
That was when he was a good guy. Come on.
But I think Andrew now is such a big star, he's got heavies, and when he comes into the studio, the men around him, they're all Russian.
And they do have Russian accents, that's true. That's more a kind of fetish thing.
Do you think England would ever put this much effort into taking Scotland back?
I think they would lose. If they tried.
We got no chance against us.
We'd be like the Taliban in the hills with our tartan robes.
You're just too accustomed to the Highland combat.
Yeah.
That's why we lost before.
Toss cables over you.
I like your hates that you're being so reasonable, but I think you're right, because I think it's important to understand what exactly Putin is up to in order to resolve this situation.
Well, it feels more strategic than people are giving him credit for, insofar as, why now? Why is he doing this now? We have to say that ever since Afghanistan, there is a sense in which Putin at least believes that there is a weakness in the Western military engine. So he's had these troops on the border for over a year, right? So why make this decision? I don't know. Maybe he's just mad. Maybe he's just evil. Whatever, but maybe he's calculating things a bit more. Maybe all of the fears that he has openly articulated numerous times about NATO moving eastwards maybe we should take those at his word. When
NATO
he says that.
hasn't been moving eastwards, and it has never invaded or attacked Russia.
I think the last NATO country to exceed in the east was in 1994.
Yeah, but we're not talking about in the last couple of years. We're talking about the into Latvia, into Poland. We're talking about on a sort of a broader scale.
So before he became president, I mean,
but he's thinking historically.
Well, he's also thinking, which is a dangerous thing. He's got an ideological date with history. He wants to be the person who reunifies what he thinks in his head is Russia. The Ukraine.
Absolutely. He's also invoking imperial rhetoric.
Yeah.
He's talking about the Russian Empire. All of this stuff that. I would have said a few weeks ago that he can't really believe all of that sort of stuff, and now he's actually saying it.
Yeah.
And you think that is it does. I agree with you. It comes across as unhinged.
But are there parallels with Kim Jong-un in North Korea that where these people get their power is the threat of force, and what he's got to do is occasionally he's got to sort of flex his muscles and do something like this in order to remind people that he is this sort of great power broker.
Yeah. But is
that what it is? Just sending a message?
But it's not working for him. The message that he's sending is that his troops can't even take Kyiv. You know what I mean? What embarrassment! He's supposed to be this hugely powerful
they've
tyrant.
Gone to the wrong
it's ridiculous.
Place.
Maybe they've gone to the wrong place
because they're quite old school. The Russians. They've probably got maps. And they're like, wait a minute, where's Kyiv?
This is something they've actually been doing. So the Ukrainians have been changing the names on the road signs.
No, you are kidding
like they're
me.
in a Bugs Bunny movie. They change the names on the road signs, so the Russians go in and they don't. Obviously, they're following the road signs. They don't know where they're going, so they go to the wrong place. They'll probably turn up in Blackpool or something.
Let's hope that no one in the Russian military finds out about Google Maps.
Google
Otherwise-
Maps, it's called over there.
Oh, God, nicely done. That's why we pay the big bucks. Well, Leo, let's keep your attention, please, because I want to look at the Observer now. Let's talk about the NHS. The staff aren't happy.
Yeah, so the NHS are very stressed, apparently, and a record number of them, more than 400 NHS workers a week in England, have left every week to restore the work-life balance over the last year. So, I mean, obviously, coronavirus, wiped them out. A lot of NHS staff got coronavirus. They're working, the front line, being exposed to it. So they got it before there were vaccines or anything. And a couple of NHS workers that I know actually felt very hurt that they were then subject to a vaccine mandate after they'd been put in the front line and expected to catch coronavirus without a vaccine. They caught it again. Some of them have long COVID, and then they're told, oh, you have to get this vaccine, even though you've basically got natural immunity because you've been exposed so much. So, yeah, I mean, and there's a huge amount of work to be done in the NHS. So 6 million people, that's 1 in 10 of the population, are waiting for a procedure in Britain's hospital. And by 2024, which coincidentally is when the next election is going to be, that's going to rise to 14 million people. And I don't know what we're planning a lot of skateboard accidents or something between now and then. So yeah, waiting lists are going to.
This at a time when we threatened NHS staff with the sack for not having the vaccine.
Yeah.
I know, and I think this is quite a big deal. Like they're quitting at this record level. 400 a week. The strain on these people has been immense. I mean, it absolutely must have been.
100%.
And it is such a big deal because it's such a vocation to go into medicine and to go into healthcare, right? So you have to really care about it. You have to really want it to be driven away.
It requires goodwill, doesn't it?
It really does. So for these people to say, no, we've had enough. For the people who've put their necks out and done it, I mean, it's a big problem. And the NHS, I think, is the waiting list, as Leo says, are quite right. They are spiralling out of control. The government needs to take control of this.
And we've got the cost of living crisis, so food and housing and energy is spiralling up, while NHS pay rises aren't going up anywhere near as high. And also care workers, other people in the social sector, a third of care workers left their roles in 2020 to 21. So that's just in 1 year.
I think it's really important in these sort of things, in sort of NHS, in teaching, in education, make those jobs as comfortable and as easy as they can be, given that they're not easy jobs. They're always going to be horrendously difficult. And so therefore, we should be paying them better. We should be making their lives more comfortable so they don't leave.
And it should all come out of Andrew's taxes, because he's the one who wants it.
Well, this is where we disagree. But by all means, take my tax. Well, I do pay taxes. I do fund the NHS, as do you, I hope.
Glad to hear it. Finally, a little bit of coherence and order has been established in the studio. Well, lots more stories to get through, including the single most convoluted parking ticket you'll ever hear about. I'll see you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'm Mark Dolan. Welcome back to Headliners, a first look at tomorrow's papers in the company of two top comedians. Tonight, a man who's never knowingly undersold. It's Andrew Doyle. And every little helps when it comes to Leo Kearse. With these two, I can always taste the difference. The Mail on Sunday now. And this story is a bit of a juicy one, actually. Swedish lockdowns.
Yeah, I thought this might appeal to you. So this is a... we're obviously...
It's great for my echo chamber, isn't it?
It's perfect for your echo chamber, yeah. So Sweden have conducted a government report into whether their lockdowns or their lack thereof was the right approach. Turns out they think that it was. It says that, as you know, Sweden trusted the public. That was their approach, really. And the officials now are saying that other countries that imposed severe lockdowns had significantly worse outcomes than Sweden did. And it always struck me that this idea of trusting, explaining to the public the situation, explaining why it would be better for them to stay at home or whatever, if they could, it means that people could take an independent choice about what's best for themselves and for the community. And people, let's face it, it looks like it. In truth, we probably won't know, will we, for like decades, when we can look back and say, what was the right approach? And it is a new virus and people didn't know. I have every sympathy with people trying to, governments trying to cope with this. But, it could be the case that this policy was the way to go all along. It's a very real possibility.
Well, notwithstanding whether it was the right thing or not the right thing, we're lucky that we've got that control in the experiment, because if it wasn't for Sweden or certain states in America or Japan and elsewhere, then frankly, the sort of the idea of the mechanism of lockdown would probably be with us forever.
Sure.
It could just be that what's happened in Sweden, with not everybody dropping dead straight away, is that governments will think twice about future lockdowns.
Well, I certainly think they should think twice about manipulating the public psychologically, trying to scare the public into doing their bidding, not informing people about what the rules are and then punishing them when they break rules, or sometimes when they don't break rules, with the police sort of going through people's shopping bags, checking to see whether things were essential or not essential, sending drones over the Lake District, people walking their dogs. No one seemed... It was chaotic. It was overbearing. And it did indicate a complete lack of trust. They thought they had to scare everyone. Well, actually, most people are decent people and will do the decent thing if you convey the information,
Well, yes, and we saw evidence of that over Christmas when the government didn't bother in England with more COVID restrictions, irrespective of and against the wishes of SAGE.
Yes.
But what a lot of people did is they didn't go to parties, they didn't go out. Yeah. But what's important is that was their choice, that was their judgment.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
This is the thing, because, in Sweden, they allowed the population to rely on their own common sense. And I don't think that would work in Britain, because we named a boat Boaty McBoatface, and we do Morris dancing. We're not a nation of common sense. We're a nation of, getting drunk and acting crazy.
And Sweden are more... Well, they've got ABBA, which suggests a certain kind of rigour.
They're very, polite and regimented. People think British people are polite, but then you get to Britain and you realise we're not polite at all. We are vomiting.
Yeah, but in Sweden, they didn't... There's not even... people say, the Swedes are so obedient. They weren't given instructions. They weren't told. The schools were kept open, shops stayed open, hospitality. So it was life as normal, and of course no mask mandates either.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I think if we had have trusted people in the UK more, they would have been just as good as the Swedes. I think. Yeah, I think you have a very low opinion, particularly probably of English people, but I think they would have done that, because we saw that at the start of the lockdown. People were helping each other out. People were, there was that sense of, we're sort of.
And if you're in your mid-70s and you're a bit overweight and you've got asthma, you're not going to be going to any all-night raves, are you?
No, and if you know someone who's in that condition, you're going to be careful, of course, about whether or not you.
As I was, I became.
Unless you want their house.
I definitely was in self-imposed lockdown whenever I knew I'd be seeing my parents.
Right.
So go figure. Well, look, as you say, time will tell, and the data will continue to roll in, and it remains an interesting conversation going forward. How about this now in The Observer and a shocking miscarriage of justice, Leo?
This is absolutely insane. I did some other research on this. So basically this guy, Anthony Broadwater, he served 16 years in prison for the rape in 1981 of the author Alice Sebold. and he was exonerated last year. He's now filed a $50 million wrongful conviction lawsuit in New York State. But, I mean, the story just gets crazier and crazier. So, basically, in 1999, Siebold, who was raped in 1981, she published Lucky. So, it was an account of her ordeal and the rape and everything, in which she described seeing a black man in the street months after the rape, who she believed to be her attacker. And he was arrested, and she didn't even identify him in a lineup, but he was still put on trial and ended up being convicted. And he had opportunities to be released if he admitted his guilt, and he refused to because he was innocent. And then he was still, 16 years in jail. Then the person who they were going to turn the book into a film, and the producer who was going to make the film started researching the story and was like, "Wait a minute, this doesn't sound like the guy actually did it.
Yeah,
They've got the wrong
guy. Private investigator, didn't he? So he found out that this was a wrongful conviction.
He hired a private investigator who did what the police should have done, 16 years previously, and found out he was innocent.
Yeah.
So it's incredible, and and also it means for all that time the actual real rapist was free and probably.
Do you think his lawyers are confident they'll get a payout? Is it looking good for him?
I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, there are obviously, huge errors, and particularly, with the attention that's being given to systemic racism, in police forces. I think he's got a good chance of getting something.
Well, I mean, so he should. I mean, insofar as it's unfathomable that amount, having your liberty taken away when you are completely innocent for that length of time. And they're saying now the book's being withdrawn, the revising and all the rest of it. But it's just. I know someone who was once falsely accused of not anything as severe as this, but a sexual assault. And for a start, you've been accused of one of the most heinous things ever, and you have this terrible stigma because people always believe anyone who's accused.
No smoke without fire.
Exactly, people always think that anyway. And then when you're in prison for 16 years, I think he deserves a payout.
Years he'll never get back.
And he had opportunities to get out if he just admitted, if he signed the confession.
So therefore, this guy's a very honourable guy and a very principled guy, and he didn't sell out because he couldn't, he had to be true to himself. Now, look, what happened to Alice Siebold is truly horrific, the most appalling crime. Do you think, though, that this wrongful conviction could damage her at all in any way?
No, I mean, look, she was an 18-year-old woman who experienced this horrible thing, and there was no malice here. She believed that this was the man who did this, and it
was someone else's job to identify whether he was guilty.
Right, it was the justice system, it was the police, it was the investigators. Blaming her, it seems completely inappropriate to me. This is not what this is about.
What about this filmmaker? Do you think he'll make his film, except now it'll be a different film?
It's been scrapped, hasn't it?
Oh, the film's been scrapped. But I mean, this would make an amazing film. I mean, somebody get on a false charge.
I think the producer deserves a cut of the damages, though, don't you think?
Well, he might get. I mean, he's certainly going to get a bunch of flowers. I mean, if it wasn't for him, the guy'd still be considered a rapist and in jail. And I think, Alice Siebold, come on, she does deserve a bit of the blame. She did accuse him, and he did get sent to jail. When you read through the
blame is a difficult thing, as far as if she had maliciously done so, knowing that this was not the case.
I am a person on Twitter in 2022. I find it very easy to apportion blame.
There we go.
There you go. Well, I blame both of you. Now, Sunday Telegraph next, and a story that certainly makes me question my old English literature teacher. Did I ever really know her at all, Andrew? Mrs. Reid.
OK, so this is apparently there's been a seminar for teachers, an online seminar which has been seen by the Sunday Telegraph and English teachers. This is the National Association for the Teaching of English. And they invited teachers of English to come along, watch this seminar, and to talk about, and it was all about whiteness in the GCSE curriculum, and it was all about how English exams and even the examination system and the way that the marks are allocated upholds whiteness. And of course, this is part of this mania which is connected to critical race theory, but this sort of mania that just sees everything through the prism of race. And of course, inevitably now it's being applied in schools, and certainly the practitioners of these theories are trying to smuggle it into schools without calling it critical race theory, even though that's what it actually is. And of course, the problem with that, when you apply it to literature, I mean, look, if you're teaching a book like A Passage to India, say, and you don't talk about empire, that doesn't make any sense. You do have to teach about these sort of things. You do have to reckon with. Well, the book is very critical of empire, is reckoning with those things. Okay, so that makes complete sense to me. But this is sort of implying that every book has to be seen through the lens of race, which simply just doesn't apply for a lot of texts. And that's the problem with these activists. is that they are totally ill-equipped to deal with art and literature because they can only see everything, not just the world, but the creative industries. Everything is seen in terms of group identity and power structures. That's their faith, that's their religion, and that's how they see the world. You know, it's like a religious zealot, a Christian zealot, only thinking in terms of the resurrection of Christ and applying it to every single text that they read. It's not. It's a way to, like, you know, if I'm reading a book which has those sort of things, and a post-colonial reading of texts can be really interesting, but it's one way of reading it. And if you say this is the only way of reading it, it's very limiting, and you're not really in a position to teach.
No, and education, especially at GCSE level, should be quite broad.
Well, it should be, and also, you know, people are missing the poetry of these books and the humanity of these books and the universality, what we used to call liberal humanism. You know, all of that is gone, and the young people's experience of the text are completely obliterated by imposing what is a very ideological stance. And it's really worrying. Do you know what I think needs to happen? I think teachers need to stand up in these courses and say, this is rubbish, and this is why I think it's rubbish, because these people don't know much, right? And when you challenge them, they actually sort of fall apart pretty quickly, because all they've got is, no, we're right, it's all power structures.
They've probably only read about the first 4 pages of Moby Dick.
They haven't read that. They've read Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility 20 times, and they think they therefore
By the way,
understand
can
the
I just
world.
say that nobody has ever got past page 4 of Moby Dick?
I've read Moby
Even
Dick.
Herman Melville.
Yeah,
I've just like...
It's bizarre, isn't it?
Watch the movie.
I made it right to the end.
Yeah, one other concern on it's the age issue that worries me about this, because I guess if you're indoctrinated with this nonsense, this very strong ideology about critical race theory at university, you're old enough perhaps to have the critical faculties to push back.
Well, it's difficult at university as well, though, because if you do start pushing back, you won't get the marks and you won't pass.
Oh, God, well, there you go. But the issue you've got is, you know, GCSE kids, 13, 14, 15 years of age.
Well, it's worse than that, isn't it? Because, you know, with Brighton Council trying to push through their anti-racist school strategy, which sounds great, doesn't it? Anti-racism sounds great, but it's not. It's not critical race theories in the disguise of progressive language. That's what it is. American school in London, they were segregating kids by race for extracurricular activities, because that's where this stuff leads. I think it's a mania, and I think it's going to take teachers to stand up against it, although when they do, of course, they fear they won't get the promotions that they want. It is awkward, it is difficult, but I think it's going to happen.
I think it will get so mad, so extreme and so silly that then the whole thing will fall down like a house of cards. That's certainly my hope. By the way, that's my hope for this programme as well. The Mail on Sunday, and possibly the most convoluted car park in Britain, Andrew.
Yes, so Danny Baker has tweeted. That's the news. Danny Baker has tweeted.
Great presenter.
About he is indeed about this car park.
A legend, old Danny Baker, isn't he?
Apparently very good on the old football. And I don't know really what football is, but I hear he's very good at it.
No, music journalism, sport.
He does the whole thing.
He's got the whole thing.
Well, he's tweeted about this car park, which I didn't know about. This is a car park that he's parked in a lot of times. Where is this? It's somewhere in South London. And there are apparently 130 different rates, different charges, depending on whether the vehicle is Euro 6 compliant, which tax band it falls into, and the duration of the stay. So if you think about it, you've got like a grid, and you've got to kind of work out where it falls. There it is. You can see it there. You've got to try and work out what it is. It's almost like a test. You know, you're going to park your car and you've got to sort of pass this test. And of course, people don't know whether their cars are compliant with Euro, whatever that is.
And then you'll have to download the app and enter all your details onto the app and, like, you know, pay for it. That's how you've got to do, like, car parking these days.
Well, as Danny Baker says, how bored must these people, but they must have loads of time on their hands to put this together.
I'm just amazed that council staff could actually put the hours in and do enough work to get this grid made.
Who do we blame for this? Brexit, maybe?
We should blame everything on Brexit, ultimately.
Yeah. By the way, we've got a new thing for Brexit because of Brexit. It's been replaced by because of COVID. Yeah, because of COVID is the new because of Brexit.
I see.
So maybe we'll blame that, all these bans, is just because of COVID. We were talking earlier in the show about terrible customer service, which is just being blamed on the pandemic, except it's been 2 years and the pandemic's...
Well, you need a scapegoat, don't you? You know, and if you have to solve a puzzle to park your car, you've got to blame something.
Well, too right. Gosh, didn't realise we'd get so philosophical. Lots more to come in the next section of the show. In fact, some juicy stories, a couple of big laughs as well. See you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Mark Dolan. Tonight I am in the company of a double act tastier than Green and Blacks and more chemical than SmithKline Beecham. Andrew Doyle and Leo Kearse. And let's crack on with our next story. And these next two related stories are bringing me out in hives because I am on a low-carb diet. So, Leo, this is going to be very triggering for me.
This won't affect you at all, Mark, because this relates to wheat. So I think I overpronounced the "wh" in that. But yeah, basically...
It's Spanish.
Ukraine and Russia, you might have heard of those two countries, they account for a third of the world's wheat exports, meaning prices are heavily dependent on supply from the two countries. Obviously, supply is disrupted, what with Russia now being under sanctions, so they can't sell us wheat, and Ukraine is being bombed, so the wheat is on fire. And the Daily Mail, and this is some great investigative journalism here, wheat is a staple in foods such as pasta and bread.
Is that right?
That is right. So increases will be felt by consumers who buy pasta and bread. So great bit of info there. And also, as well as that, we've got the triple, double, quadruple whammy of soaring energy bills. They're going to increase by an average of £700 in April, and higher petrol prices and national insurance contributions. So yeah, we're facing, as we sort of face down Russia, it's gonna hit us in the pockets. We're going to be paying more for a loaf of bread, more for our petrol, more for our gas supply and oil supply. But I think it's worth it. I think we should endure a bit of hardship to teach Putin a lesson.
I think this is a good article so we can find out what bushel means. What is a bushel?
A lot of things are hidden under it, aren't they?
They are. You often find things under bushels, but I don't know what they are really.
Yeah, I think it's normally covering lights, so I'm told.
Oh, OK.
According to folklore.
I mean, from reading the article, it seemed like a quantity of something, a quantity of anything.
I agree. You do wonder whether
of wheat.
In Elizabethan times,
Definitely
it sounds
wheat.
like a certain volume of really sort of stagnant, warm beer, doesn't it?
I thought bushel would be, it's like tied in the middle. You know, like when you look at a loaf of bread and it's got the picture on it, they want to convince you that it's made by, horny-handed sons of the soil, and they make it with a windmill.
So that's what you
stuff
imagine
like
a bushel
that. So they've got the bushels tied in the middle, and the wheat's all coming out all golden and stuff like that.
That's
a bushel.
I don't think that's what
not
it is.
anymore. Now it's like a box or something like that.
Yeah.
In a warehouse with rats running around. It's horrible.
Sounds also like an insult, doesn't it? Well, at a bushel.
Yeah,
Just a bit.
Bushel, yeah.
And there's Gary Bushel,
We could have just
named after wheat.
we could have just Googled this before we went on TV.
It's just
talked
nice,
about it.
by the way, to name check Gary Bushell in 2022.
Yeah.
People don't do that, do they, very often?
No way. An excellent, a bearded Fleet Street legend.
You know what? The world hasn't been the same since all the problems seemed to start when Gary Bushell went off TV.
Correct. That's when we went downhill. That's the golden era. It's a little, I don't want to offend the Christians, but before Christ, after Christ, before Bushell, after Bushell.
BB.
Not that Gary is not still with us, by the way, and enjoying a well-deserved retirement. But this was a guy who was a TV critic, I think, for The Sun.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, the guy's got his journalistic chops, but I think he also got that gig because they could come up with the name Bushell on the box.
Yeah. I wonder what you'd say about this. We should probably
5 stars. I think you'd say, what load of Bushell. It is. By the way, I was speaking to a colleague earlier, and they were saying that very often in history you get revolutions when the bread runs out.
Yes, this is what they say, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
I guess it's a staple, isn't it?
And in Turkey,
apparently the article says it's a staple.
And also, doesn't it mean that we're all addicted to bread? I mean, bread, I can tell you, is a low carb, but bread is very Moorish.
Oh yeah, no, we eat a lot of bread. I ate some bread today, but yeah, it's not just wheat is going up in price. It's also in Turkey. They're being crippled by strikes over the price. So the price of bread has shot up because they're not only having to import wheat, but their currency has been devalued. Erdogan, the president, has embarked on some terrible sort of financial foolscapery. So they've had inflation shooting up. So he's tried to combat it. Instead of by raising interest rates, which brings inflation down, he's lowered inflation because he says then it'll be cheaper for businesses to borrow, which is completely distorting things. So they've got inflation of 48% right now, and their currency is collapsing, so they can't afford to import wheat. And this is right at the crunch moment, and this might be in Putin's calculations. This is right at the moment when we need, they need the wheat from Russia and from Ukraine, and it's right when they're dependent on Russian wheat, and they need to say no to Russia.
The addiction to bread reminds me of that scene in Airplane, the comedy, the sort of very funny spoof comedy film about a plane that's crashing, and one of the stewardesses makes an announcement to everyone on the plane. They say, "Look, we've got the most horrific air turbulence." Everyone's really calm. And then they say, and our main pilot is now incapacitated. He can't fly. They're completely calm. And they go, and we've run out of coffee. Everyone just goes completely crazy. I think there are parallels. Who knew? Let's move on now. And this is in The Observer. Andrew, bad behaviour in a supermarket goes cinema goes tragically wrong.
Well, this is for some reason on this show I've had a number of stories recently where someone has an altercation in a public space and then it escalates to the point of murder, and so it's really sort of horrible. This is Florida. So it was an ex-police officer in his 70s, and he was at the cinema with his wife, and a younger man, Curtis Reeves, was sitting Curtis Reeves was the older man, and the younger man was sitting in front of him, Chad Olson, with his wife, and they got into a row over a cell phone. So Olson was on the phone during the film, which is really annoying, I get that. The other guy asked him to turn it off. They rowed. He threw popcorn in his face, and the man shot him dead. So
terrible.
Now the thing about
waste of popcorn.
Well, there's that. I mean, I would say that this. I keep hearing these stories, and I just keep coming back to this point that if you've got guns, if people have got guns, and the blood's up, and in that moment there's no rational thought, right? So this I don't. This is why I don't understand the argument against gun control, insofar as most murders are crimes of passion. They just happen, and then people regret it immediately afterwards. And surely this is falling into that category.
I don't think he regrets it because he got off and he killed the guy who threw popcorn at him. That sounds like a great night out for him.
Yeah.
I mean, well, he did get off. You're right.
It's very, very a sad story, and I don't know why he felt like the need to look at his phone during a film. Maybe it was one of those period dramas.
It's annoying when people do it.
Don't get me wrong, that is the most annoying thing.
It wasn't. It was a film about shooting, funnily enough. It was an Afghan war film, a lone survivor. And ironically, only one of them survived. So
I thought maybe it was Emma or Little Women.
No, because that came out
Little
25 years ago. So it wouldn't be shown in cinema.
Well, Little Women, there was an update to that recently. And if I'd had a gun,
bigger women.
If I'd had a gun, I'd have gone postal, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, exactly. Slightly bigger women, what a line. Moving swiftly on, let's see if we can squeeze a few more in, if we can, before the end of the show. It turns out the wealthiest enjoy much more green space than the less well-off, which surprises me, as I thought what do we think? There's a lot of prejudice about this.
Well, I mean, this is to do with the poorest areas of England have less than a third of garden space enjoyed by the richest. This is the Observer analysis. They're saying the richest 10% of areas in England, properties had 379 square metres on average, compared with 114 square metres in the poorest 10%. This is the Office of National Statistics. But there is an impact to this. There's a sort of roll-on impact to this, which is that people from the poorest areas tend to die, on average, 19 years younger than the people in the richest areas. And I think there's all sorts of reasons for this. But it's absolutely true, and we all know this, that when you are in the countryside, in natural environs, you are more psychologically secure. I mean, I certainly am. You know, this is why I go to places which are by the sea and, you know, where there are fields and all the rest, because it makes you more comfortable. There's something innate about our need. And I think people who are sort of in the middle of city, you completely disagree with me on this.
Oh, yeah, totally. No.
I know, because you like...
I love the chaos and the smog.
Exactly.
And the muck, the grime.
I can't handle it. How do you get anything done?
I don't get anything done. I just do stuff like this.
No, I think human beings need to be connected to nature.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of a... No, I mean, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice. But I mean, I pay... I mean, I don't think I'm the poorest in the poorest bracket, and I don't have any outdoor space. I mean, there's the bit where we put the bins, but that's tiny. I mean, it's tiny because the bins are there, and it's probably about half an acre, but there's so many different recycling bins that, you know, I could probably fit like a deck and several sun loungers in there.
But if everyone had a garden, everyone would be happier. I think that's the point.
Correct.
I think that's the point.
If you created a utopia, everyone's got like a little garden.
Yeah. That's exactly what we should have. I don't have a garden, and I want a garden because I want a dog, and I can't have a dog because I don't have a garden.
Oh, don't get a dog, get gerbils. Gerbils are hilarious, and they just live in a tank. So, like,
they're not affectionate.
They are affectionate. Or degus. Degus are like they're like big gerbils, but they're actually affectionate.
I think that's a rat.
They're like dogs.
I think you've been missold.
It's a Chilean ground squirrel.
Yes, Mr. Curse, it's a degu.
No.
I think if I was going to have anything like that, it would be a chinchilla.
South American ground squirrel.
And what's the difference between a dago and a rat?
Well, rats
100 quid.
are a different animal for a start. And rats have got hairless tails. And they live in sewers and stuff like that. So, and they're not very clean. But degus are hilarious.
I would not trust his. I would not trust his, advice on pet acquisitions.
It's becoming a really wild show. Let's crack on. Metro next, and hoarding may have an explanation, Andrew.
This is Anglia Ruskin University have done this study into hoarding. No, I didn't know. Apparently, it's a hoarding disorder. Became an official psychiatric disorder from 2013. I thought it was just people who like to keep stuff. And I didn't realise that this was a psycho. I always think of the Chris Lilly show, Lunatics, the character in that, who just hoards absolutely everything. And it's true, I've seen that these people have this compulsion. This story is talking about how people with ADHD, this study from Anglia Ruskin University is claiming that people with ADHD are more likely to have hoarding issues. So they're sort of recommending that if there are people with ADHD, people should keep an eye on them to check that they're not hoarding things. It doesn't go through why that correlation exists, just that the correlation exists. I just thought it was a bad habit.
Yeah, it makes great TV shows though. Have you seen those shows where they go to somebody's house and it's all just stacked, like
trash.
Full, and they're almost living like a Chilean ground squirrel, just burrowing through the stacks of old Metro newspapers.
Some of the stuff they keep, it can have no possible value.
And they can't throw it out. They'll have an umbrella and they'll say, no, I can fix it. I'll fix it in the future.
Yeah, it's a compulsion. It's that mentality which I've got a touch of, which is, I don't know, that fishing rod. You know, maybe one day in the future I will become a fisherman.
But I don't think that's why
I don't think I've got the fisherman look.
No, you don't really.
I don't know what the fisherman look is, but this ain't it.
No, it's not.
I can see you in a crab boat.
I've had crabs.
Losing an arm in a winch and not even caring, drinking some rum.
My college years. I'll tell you all about crabs. I've studied by the sea.
Yes, of course.
But that's it. It's an interesting syndrome, and maybe we take it seriously.
Look, I don't want to demean anyone's, condition, but I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, well, credit to Leo Kearse, who has been hoarding comedy material for about 15 years.
That's right.
Just when you think the light of humanity couldn't get any dimmer, big game hunters come along to show us new levels of darkness, Leo.
That's right. So, well, let's approach this with an open mind. But the South African government has granted animal hunting permits for big game, including 10 critically endangered black rhinos, 10 leopards and 150 elephants, not all to the same person. But basically, these animals are critically endangered, but their populations are growing quite quickly. And giving this is what people don't understand about the countryside that you love so much. If you want it to be there, you've got to pay for it. So if you go to the moors of Scotland, they're grouse moors. So you've got to pay for the moors to be cultivated with and managed by gamekeepers. And people pay because they come along and shoot the grouse, and it's a very expensive. It's our equivalent of shooting a bunch of elephants. So it's the same thing in South Africa. By charging people a lot of money to come along and shoot these elephants, it's paying for the habitat and the environment that's keeping their populations supported.
No, but isn't the point that we shouldn't be shooting endangered animals? I mean, I would have thought this is quite an obvious...
We're shooting a tiny proportion. And
they're still critically endangered.
Isn't this like us in the misguided West? We try to make things better, interfering with other cultures.
Cultural imperialism.
Oh, come on now. No, I'm sorry. You can ask the rhinos about this. They're not going to be happy with that. Just because the population has marginally increased, it doesn't mean they're out of the woods. Look, they're still critically endangered.
There's 5,000 of them.
That's not many.
If you had 5,000 M&Ms, would you give me 10?
No.
Well, that's just mean.
But this is
just greedy.
This is like, when media outlets talk about closing sweatshops, and of course it's awful the way that clothes are made abroad, but sometimes you shut down these factories where people are paid very little, and then they instead go into drugs, human trafficking, prostitution. It's like, well done, everyone. Thanks for your help, the West.
But what are you suggesting? That if people don't shoot the endangered black rhino, then
it's a complex financial ecosystem.
Would you rather that this land was used for something else that wasn't?
There must be a better way.
Animals?
I'm not saying I have the answer, but there must be one.
Now, this is an interesting story in the Sunday Telegraph. Intermittent fasting.
Yes, so if people don't know, intermittent fasting is when you only eat within a certain period of time during the day. I think it's what you can only eat within an 8-hour period of the day, so then the other 16 hours you don't eat at all. And apparently it works. So this is the thing about it. Apparently people do, and of course it's a better way to lose it. There used to be the sort of 5-2 thing, where you would take...
Michael Mosley.
What's that? Sorry?
Michael Mosley wrote that book.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay. Because that basically you don't eat at all on 2 of the days. But actually, that's very bad for you. It can cause accidents. People aren't, But this actually is a more healthy way of doing it because you're still eating every day. You're just eating within that 8-hour window. And this study has found that if you choose as your periods when you can eat between 6 a.m. and 3 p.m., you're going to lose a lot more weight than if you were to choose, say, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m.
I mean, I'll give you in 3 seconds, a bit longer. Insulin is the main fat storage hormone of the body, and so when insulin is low, then you tend to burn fat that's stored on your body.
Yeah. Right.
And when you intermittent fast, insulin drops to 0.
So is that why?
Yeah. So it just unlocks those fat cells and it all drains away.
And
so,
insulin's quite a corrosive, quite a dangerous. It's been
very
implicated not just in very inflammatory, and also it's been linked to Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
All kinds of
heart disease as well.
Yeah.
Well, you've taught me something, Mark, because this article doesn't even say that, and now I know. Now I know why.
Resources would be Michael Mosley, whose book is very much about intermittent fasting. Also Jason Fung, who's a medic in America. And also dietdoctor.com, I think, is a very good resource on that. David Unwin here in the UK, NHS GP. But what is most important in these matters is always talk to your own GP if you're thinking about changing your diet. But can I just say I wouldn't change a thing about the 2 of you. I mean, what a pair of specimens.
I mean, it's very kind of you. You're always a bit flirty, aren't you, on these shows?
Andrew, if I could have your babies, I would.
Well, maybe it's a possibility. You shouldn't rule it out.
I think we should try. Because it's 2022 and anything's possible. Fascinating conversation. And, of course, we're back tomorrow with 2 more brilliant comedians. Not of that calibre, obviously, because how would that be possible? Thanks for your company. Headliners returns at 11 tomorrow, and I'm back at 9. Can't wait to see you then.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling.
noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome along to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on radio. Tonight I'll be asking what on earth is going on in Ukraine and, furthermore, what is likely to happen next. I'll be joined by the historian Dan Cruikshank to discuss the discovery of a huge Roman mosaic. It's been unearthed near the Shard in London. Plus, and this isn't a drill, we will have an award-nominated hero dog live in the studio. All of that and more coming up. But first, an update on the latest news.
Thank you, Neil. I'm Miranda Shunker. The top stories from the GB newsroom. An advisor to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia's attack on Kiev is not advancing and around 3,500 Russian soldiers have been killed or injured so far. Well, this evening, an air raid siren was heard in the capital as Russian forces pounded the city with artillery and cruise missiles. The mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko, has imposed a curfew and people have been warned to seek shelter. Earlier, President Zelensky said, "We will fight as long as it takes to liberate the country." He's urging the Russian people to tell Moscow now to back down.
I want absolutely everyone in Russia to hear me. Thousands of victims, hundreds of prisoners who simply can't understand why they were sent to Ukraine to die, to kill others. The sooner you tell your government the war must be stopped immediately, the more of your people will be kept alive. We can see that there are